The massive alien slammed his body against the energy barrier for the 100th time that day. His crimson scales scraped against the invisible wall as sparks flew in every direction. The creature they called Vex was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Standing 7 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel, he was pure nightmare fuel wrapped in razor-sharp scales. Captain Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched through the reinforced observation window. In his 20 years of transporting dangerous criminals across the galaxy, he had never encountered anything like this. Most prisoners eventually calmed down, accepted their fate, or at least got tired. But not this one. This beast had been throwing himself against his cage walls for 2 solid weeks without stopping. "Sir, the energy readings are getting concerning," reported Lieutenant Thompson, her voice shaking slightly as she checked her tablet. "The containment field is holding, but barely. This thing hits harder than a mining laser." The alien's yellow eyes glowed like twin suns in the darkness of his cell. Every few minutes, he would let out a roar that made the entire ship vibrate. The sound was so terrifying that half the crew had requested sleeping pills just to get through their shifts. Even the veteran guards who had dealt with murderers, pirates, and war criminals were genuinely afraid. Vex belonged to a species called the Ravik, and they were the stuff of legends across 3-star systems. For centuries, they had been the boogeyman that parents used to scare children into behaving. They were apex predators who knew no fear, showed no mercy, and had never been successfully tamed or reasoned with. Their home planet was a death world where only the strongest survived, and they had evolved to be perfect killing machines. The capture operation had taken 6 months of planning and cost the Galactic Council millions of credits. Vex had terrorized merchant ships, destroyed 3 space stations, and killed over 200 beings during his rampage across the Outer Rim territories. Military experts had called him unstoppable. It took an entire fleet, neural suppressors, energy nets, and a specialized containment team just to bring him down. "How did we even manage to catch this thing?" asked Ensign Davis, a young recruit who was experiencing his first deep space assignment. He pressed his face against the observation window, both fascinated and horrified by the creature below. "Barely," Captain Rodriguez replied grimly. "We lost 4 ships and 30 good people in the process. Command only authorized the operation because this monster was getting too close to populated systems. Another few weeks and he would have reached the colonies." The alien's claws were each as long as a human hand and could slice through most metals like butter. His teeth were designed for tearing apart prey, and his muscular tail could snap a person's spine with a casual flick. But it was his intelligence that made him truly dangerous. Unlike other predatory species, the Ravik were smart. They could plan, strategize, and adapt. Vex had outmaneuvered military tacticians and escaped from supposedly secure facilities multiple times. "What happens when we reach the maximum security prison?" Thompson asked, though she already knew the answer would not be pleasant. Captain Rodriguez did not respond immediately. Everyone knew that Vex was not going to any regular prison. The Galactic Council had already decided his fate. Creatures like him could not be contained forever, and the risk of escape was too great. The transport ship was simply a temporary measure while they prepared for his execution. The alien seemed to sense their discussion because his attacks on the barrier became even more violent. The lights in the corridor flickered as the ship's power grid struggled to maintain the containment field. Warning alarms began beeping as stress fractures appeared in the surrounding walls. "Increase power to the containment systems," ordered the captain. "And get everyone except essential personnel away from this section. I do not want anyone near this thing unless absolutely necessary." As the crew scattered, Vex pressed his face against the energy barrier and stared directly at the observation window. For a moment, it seemed like he was looking right through the reinforced glass and into their souls. His yellow eyes held an intelligence that was both ancient and terrifying. This was not some mindless beast acting on instinct. This was a thinking, calculating predator who understood exactly what was happening to him. The transport ship continued its journey through the cold darkness of space, carrying the galaxy's most dangerous prisoner toward what everyone assumed would be his final destination. None of them could have predicted that everything would change when they docked at the next station for routine supplies and picked up a simple maintenance worker who was not afraid of monsters. The transport ship docked at Kepler Station with a loud clang that echoed through the corridors. Captain Rodriguez let out a deep breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. After 2 weeks of constant stress from their dangerous passenger, the crew desperately needed this supply stop. Half his people were running on energy drinks and determination alone. "All right everyone, we've got 12 hours for resupply and crew rotation," the captain announced over the ship's communication system. "Those going on leave, get out and stretch your legs. Those staying, try to get some actual sleep for once. Among the new temporary workers boarding the ship was a man named Tyler Washington. He carried a basic toolkit and wore the simple gray uniform of a maintenance technician. At first glance, there was nothing particularly special about him. Average height, average build, with calm dark eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. "You sure you want this assignment?" asked Station Supervisor Janet Kim as she handed him his work orders. "We've got other ships that need maintenance work too. Easier jobs." Tyler glanced at the hazard pay bonus listed on his contract. "This pays triple the normal rate. What's the catch?" Janet hesitated. "They've got something dangerous in the cargo hold. Real dangerous. The kind of thing that gives seasoned space marines nightmares. Most workers won't go near that section of the ship." "I've worked on mining rigs in asteroid fields and repair stations near black holes," Tyler said with a shrug. "Dangerous is pretty much my middle name at this point." What Janet didn't mention, and what Tyler wouldn't learn until later, was that 3 maintenance workers had already quit after just 1 day on the job. The constant roaring and the sound of something massive trying to break free had been too much for them to handle. Tyler reported for his first shift early the next morning. His job was straightforward enough: routine maintenance on the ship's life support systems, checking air filters, and making sure everything was running smoothly. The work took him through various sections of the transport, including the lower levels where most crew members avoided going. As he made his way through the corridors with his toolkit, Tyler noticed how quiet everything was. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. Most of the crew seemed to be staying in the upper sections, and the few he encountered looked tired and jumpy. Then he heard it. A sound like thunder mixed with pure rage echoing from somewhere ahead. The roar was so powerful that it made the metal walls vibrate slightly. Tyler paused for a moment, listening. He'd heard angry animals before during his time working on Frontier Worlds, but this was something else entirely. Following the maintenance route on his tablet, Tyler's path led him directly past the containment area. As he rounded the corner, he saw the heavy security doors and warning signs plastered everywhere. Authorized personnel only. Extreme danger. Lethal force authorized. Through the reinforced observation window, Tyler caught his first glimpse of Vex. The massive alien was in the middle of another assault on his cage walls, throwing his entire body weight against the energy barrier with frightening force. Sparks flew with each impact, and the lights in the corridor dimmed slightly from the power drain. Most people would have hurried past as quickly as possible. That's exactly what the previous maintenance workers had done. But Tyler was different. Instead of running away, he found himself genuinely curious about this creature that had everyone so terrified. He pulled up a metal supply crate and sat down right outside the containment area. From his lunch bag, he unwrapped a simple sandwich, turkey and cheese on wheat bread, nothing fancy. As he took his first bite, the alien's attack suddenly stopped. Vex pressed himself against the far wall of his cell, yellow eyes locked onto this strange new human. Every other person who had passed by his cage had shown fear, revulsion, or both. They would glance at him quickly and then look away, as if his very presence was too much to handle. But this human was different. Tyler chewed his sandwich calmly while studying the alien with obvious interest rather than fear. There was no trembling, no rapid breathing, no signs of the terror that Vex had grown accustomed to seeing in other species. "Well, you're definitely bigger than they described," Tyler said quietly, more to himself than to the alien. "And those scales look pretty impressive up close." For the first time since his capture, Vex was genuinely confused. This tiny creature was sitting within striking distance, if not for the energy barrier, and acting like they were simply sharing lunch break together. The alien tilted his massive head slightly, trying to understand what he was seeing. Tyler finished his sandwich, crumpled up the wrapper, and stood up. "See you around, big guy," he said casually before continuing on his maintenance route. The next day, Tyler returned to the same spot with his lunch. Word had already spread through the ship about the crazy maintenance worker who actually sat near the monster's cage, but Tyler didn't seem to care what others thought. He pulled up his usual crate, unwrapped another sandwich, and settled in for his break. Vex was waiting for him. The massive alien stood perfectly still in the center of his cell, those glowing yellow eyes fixed on the human. There was no roaring today, no violent attacks on the barriers. Just intense, curious observation. "Back again, here?" Tyler said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Can't say I blame you for being interested. Not much entertainment down here, I bet." This became their daily routine. Every lunch break, Tyler would appear with his simple meal and sit in the same spot. Sometimes he would eat in comfortable silence. Other times, he would talk about his work, complaining about faulty air recyclers or praising the ship's surprisingly good artificial gravity system. You know what's funny? Tyler said on day 3, gesturing with half of his sandwich. Everyone up there is terrified of you, but you haven't actually tried to hurt anyone since I've been here. Makes a guy wonder if maybe you're not as scary as they think. Vex's head tilted slightly at these words. In his species culture, body language meant everything, and this small gesture was the equivalent of asking a question. Tyler noticed it immediately. Oh, you understand what I'm saying, don't you? Tyler leaned forward slightly, genuinely intrigued. That's interesting. The crew briefing made it sound like your kind were just mindless killing machines, but you're actually listening. By the end of the first week, their routine had become so regular that other crew members would time their schedules around it. Everyone knew that from noon to 12:30, the corridor near the containment area would be occupied by the human and his strange lunch companion. Lieutenant Thompson was the first to notice something troubling in the ship's records. Captain, we have a problem, she reported during the morning briefing. The prisoner hasn't been fed in over 30 hours. Captain Rodriguez frowned. What do you mean? The feeding schedule is automated. The guards disabled the automatic system because they were too scared to go near the containment area, even to load the food dispensers, Thompson explained. They've been manually delivering meals, but yesterday's shift refused to do it. Said the thing looked like it was planning something. The captain rubbed his temples. This was exactly the kind of problem he had been dreading. We can't let it starve to death. The Galactic Council wants this creature delivered alive for the execution ceremony. Sir, with respect, none of the guards are willing to approach that thing. And I can't order them to do something that might get them killed. Meanwhile, Tyler was making his way to his usual lunch spot, completely unaware of the feeding situation. When he arrived, he immediately noticed that Vex looked different. The alien was lying on his side, breathing heavily, and his normally bright scales seemed dull. You don't look so good, big guy, Tyler said, sitting down on his crate. When's the last time you ate something? As if in response, Vex's stomach let out a loud growl that echoed through the containment cell. The sound was so deep and rumbling that Tyler felt it in his chest. Oh man, you're starving, aren't you? Tyler looked at his own sandwich, then back at the alien. I bet those cowards upstairs are too scared to feed you. Without hesitation, Tyler stood up and walked over to the containment unit's control panel. The feeding slot was designed to open remotely, allowing guards to deliver meals without getting too close to the prisoner. It took him a few minutes to figure out the system, but his experience with ship maintenance gave him a good understanding of basic controls. Let's see if this works, Tyler muttered, pressing several buttons in sequence. The feeding slot opened with a soft hiss. Tyler broke his sandwich in half, keeping the smaller piece for himself and offering the larger portion to Vex. He slid the food through the opening and stepped back. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. Turkey and cheese, in case you were wondering. Vex stared at the sandwich for a long moment. In his entire life, no other species had ever offered him food freely. Usually, other creatures either ran away in terror or tried to kill him on sight. This human was doing something completely unprecedented. Hunger finally overcame suspicion. Vex approached the sandwich carefully, sniffed it once, then devoured it in 2 quick bites. The taste was strange but not unpleasant, and more importantly, it eased the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. Good? Tyler asked, settling back onto his crate with his remaining half sandwich. Yeah, the ship's food isn't amazing, but it beats starving. For the first time since his capture, Vex made a sound that wasn't a roar or a growl. It was softer, almost questioning. Tyler took it as a thank you. No problem, big guy. Everyone deserves a decent meal. Week 3 brought changes that nobody on the ship expected. Tyler had settled into his routine so completely that he started bringing extra food specifically for Vex. The ship's kitchen staff thought it was odd when he requested double portions, but hazard pay workers were known for having big appetites. Morning, Vex, Tyler said, using the alien's name for the first time as he sat down with his usual crate. Yeah, I finally asked someone what they call you. Figured we should be on a first-name basis by now. The massive alien's head perked up at the sound of his name. Over the past weeks, he had been learning to recognize Tyler's voice, his footsteps, even his scent. The Ravok species had incredibly sharp senses, and Vex could detect things about this human that others couldn't. Most importantly, he smelled no fear on Tyler at all. You know what I've been thinking about? Tyler continued, unwrapping 2 sandwiches this time. Everyone keeps saying your people are just mindless killers, but that doesn't make sense. You've been watching me, learning my schedule, even responding when I talk to you. That's not mindless behavior. Vex accepted the sandwich Tyler slid through the feeding slot, but instead of devouring it immediately, he held it carefully in his massive claws. His yellow eyes never left Tyler's face. My grandmother used to tell me stories about misunderstood creatures, Tyler said, taking a bite of his own lunch. She always said that sometimes the scariest looking things are just protecting themselves the only way they know how. The alien's posture shifted slightly, becoming less defensive. Tyler noticed these small changes because he had been paying attention, really paying attention, to this creature that everyone else dismissed as a monster. Their relationship took an unexpected turn during the 4th week when pirates attacked the transport ship. The assault came without warning, 3 heavily armed raider vessels dropping out of hyperspace and immediately opening fire. Battle alarms screamed throughout the ship as the crew rushed to defensive positions. All hands to battle stations. Captain Rodriguez's voice boomed over the communication system. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The ship shuddered under enemy fire as the lights flickered on and off. Tyler was in the middle of his lunch break when the attack began, and instead of rushing to the designated safety zones like everyone else, he found himself thinking about Vex down in the containment area. The backup power systems better hold, Tyler muttered, watching the lights dim and brighten repeatedly. He knew that if main power failed, the containment barriers might weaken or shut down completely. As if responding to his thoughts, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and several sections lost power entirely. In the containment area, Vex energy barrier flickered dangerously as the power grid struggled to maintain all systems during the battle. Tyler made a decision that would have seemed crazy to anyone else on the ship. Instead of running toward safety, he headed straight for the containment area to check on Vex. When he arrived, he found the alien pressed against the back wall of his cell, watching the failing energy barrier with intelligent understanding. Power's getting unstable, Tyler said, checking the containment system's control panel. But you already figured that out, didn't you? Another explosion, much closer this time, sent Tyler sprawling across the corridor. A section of the ceiling collapsed, pinning him under twisted metal and debris. Pain shot through his leg as he tried to pull himself free, but the wreckage was too heavy. Well, this is not good, Tyler gasped, struggling against the debris that had him trapped. That's when something incredible happened. Vex, who could have easily broken through the weakened energy barrier during all the chaos, instead did something no Ravik had ever done in recorded history. He spoke. Human, hurt, Vex said in broken standard, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. Tyler's eyes widened in shock. Not just because the alien could speak, but because there was genuine concern in that alien voice. Vex wasn't trying to escape or take advantage of the situation. He was worried about the human who had shown him kindness. Help! Human hurt. Vex called out louder, hoping someone would hear him over the sounds of battle. The irony wasn't lost on Tyler, even through his pain. Here he was, trapped and injured, and the galaxy's most dangerous predator was trying to save him. The creature that everyone feared was showing more humanity than most humans ever did. Thanks, big guy, Tyler managed to say through gritted teeth. Guess we really are friends now. Vex continued calling for help until a damage control team finally arrived and found Tyler pinned under the debris. As they worked to free him, the alien watched anxiously through his cell barriers, refusing to move away from the wall closest to his injured friend. The battle eventually ended with the pirates driven off, but something fundamental had changed between human and alien. They had crossed a line that most people thought was impossible to cross. Tyler spent 3 days in the medical bay recovering from his injuries. The twisted metal had bruised his ribs and left a nasty gash on his leg, but the doctors said he was lucky to be alive. What surprised everyone was how often he asked about Vex during his recovery. "You worried about that thing?" Nurse Patricia Collins asked while checking his bandages. "Tyler, that creature could have killed you a dozen times over if the barriers had failed completely." "But he didn't," Tyler replied simply. "He called for help instead. That means something." When Tyler was finally cleared to return to work, the first place he went was the containment area. Vex was waiting for him, pressing against the energy barrier the moment he heard familiar footsteps approaching. The alien's yellow eyes seemed brighter somehow, almost relieved. "Miss me?" Tyler asked with a grin, settling onto his usual crate. "I brought extra sandwiches today. Figured you might be hungry after all that excitement." "Tyler, hurt?" Vex asked in his deep, rumbling voice. His standard was still broken and limited, but the concern in his tone was unmistakable. I'm okay, big guy. Thanks to you calling for help. Tyler slid 2 sandwiches through the feeding slot. You saved my life, you know that. This conversation marked the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. Word spread quickly through the ship that the Ravok prisoner could speak, and more importantly, that he had actively tried to help a human in danger. Captain Rodriguez was forced to contact Galactic Council Command to report this development. Sir, you're telling me that this creature showed compassion? Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the communication system from Council headquarters. Ravok don't show compassion. They're apex predators. It must be some kind of trick. With respect, Admiral, I've been watching the security footage for weeks now, Captain Rodriguez replied. This maintenance worker has somehow formed a genuine bond with the prisoner. The alien learns new words every day, asks about the human's well-being, and even shares information about ship repairs when Tyler asks for his opinion. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. This changes things. The execution order may need to be reconsidered. We need to study this development. Meanwhile, Tyler and Vex continued their daily meetings, but now their conversations were becoming more complex. Vex's grasp of standard improved rapidly, and Tyler discovered that the alien was incredibly intelligent and surprisingly curious about human culture. Why Tyler helped Vex? The alien asked one day, carefully pronouncing each word. Tyler thought about this question for a while before answering. I guess because everyone deserves a chance to be understood. You were angry and scared when I first met you. Wouldn't you be angry if someone locked you in a cage? Vex, scared. The alien seemed surprised by this idea. Vex not scared. Vex angry. Being angry and being scared can be the same thing sometimes, Tyler explained gently. When we're afraid, we sometimes get angry to protect ourselves. This simple conversation opened up something in Vex that had been buried under years of violence and survival instinct. For the first time, he began to examine his own actions and motivations. Had he really been a mindless killer, or had he been a frightened creature lashing out at a galaxy that saw him as nothing more than a monster? The breakthrough came during their 6th week together when Tyler brought him a book of pictures showing different planets and their inhabitants. Vex studied each page carefully, asking questions about the various species and their cultures. This one looked like Vex's home, the alien said, pointing to a picture of a harsh desert world with red sand and purple skies. Tell me about your home, Tyler said, genuinely interested. For the first time, Vex talked about his past. He described a world where only the strongest survived, where showing weakness meant death, and where his people had learned to strike first because everything else on their planet was trying to kill them. He spoke of losing his family to territorial wars and wandering space alone for decades. Vex think, maybe Vex wrong, the alien admitted quietly. Maybe not all other beings bad. Tyler show Vex different way. Word of these conversations reached the Galactic Council, and they made an unprecedented decision. Instead of execution, they authorized a rehabilitation program with Tyler as the primary handler and translator. It was risky and controversial, but the potential scientific and diplomatic value was too great to ignore. 6 months later, Tyler and Vex were transferred to a research facility on the frontier world of New Haven. The alien, now fluent in multiple languages, began working as a security consultant, using his predatory instincts to protect colonists from actual threats rather than being one himself. You know what's funny? Tyler said one evening as they watched the sunset from the facility's observation deck. Everyone was so afraid of you, but you turned out to be one of the most loyal friends I've ever had. Vex, now wearing a simple translation device that helped with complex conversations, rumbled what might have been laughter. Tyler see Vex when others see monster. That make Tyler family. Years later, children on frontier worlds would grow up hearing the story of the human who wasn't afraid to share his lunch with a monster, and how that simple act of kindness changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be civilized.